I'm Jamie O'Kane, CPA, Small Business Advanced Tax Planning and Compliance Extraordinaire, and this is the Abundant Beans Podcast, the podcast that takes my love for learning what makes people tick while digging into the good, bad, and ugly of small business ownership. We strive to give you the insight that only those in the trenches of being and working with entrepreneurs can provide. We'd like to welcome to the podcast Derek Porter.
Thank you.
Derek is a Marine veteran and entrepreneur, more specifically having businesses in the legal cannabis space. He started a multi-million-dollar national cannabis security company in 2012, which he sold in 2017, only to start another surveillance company specific to the cannabis industry called Resolution Security. His most recent operation and current focus is in his new lifestyle brand startup called Dynamic Warriors, wearing the shirt, which will be selling high-potency, broad and full-spectrum CBD products focusing on the veteran and patriotic market in the U.S. And you have a book coming up. We're going to talk. I want to ask you about that.
That's right. Absolutely.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. You did very well as you read that, by the way. That was good.
Reading off paper is not one of my
out
loud.
Yeah.
My kids are always like, Mom, read a book. And I'm like, no, unless it's like a baby book. I'm not very good at that.
You know, funny enough, we have a 14-month-old daughter, and we read usually every night unless she's like, throwing a fit.
Super done.
And so my wife, as she's doing the last bottle immediately afterwards, we get that burp in, and then I'll kick off with a book. And sometimes, especially if I'm tired, I'll stumble over some words. And if it's anything like Dr. Seuss, Sam I Am, and went to the pan and emptied the can, and
takes brain work.
Yeah, and I'd stumble and she would giggle at me. Now my daughter laughs at me and like kind of smacks my face as I'm reading. Anyways, I'm like, wow. Okay.
I know. My daughter, my kids plowed through the whole Harry Potter series in one summer. I think my son was 7 and my daughter was 5. And she's reading the whole Harry Potter series. I'm like, what are you doing, kid? But she's like, read out loud. And I'm like, I can't. This is like way above my level. Could we do Dr. Seuss? Because I can handle reading that out loud. But
yeah.
It's not one of my strong suits.
We all have our traits, right?
Right?
Yeah.
All right. So first question, what was your first job?
My first job, that is a great question. Under the table or...
Whatever you got.
Okay, so
I like all the answers.
The short version of the under the table job was I built decks starting at 12 with my brother, my older brother. But the first real W-2 job, I worked at Taco Bell when I was 15 for about 5 minutes. like 3 weeks. In
wow.
reality. Yeah.
Why only 3 weeks?
I guess I saw a brighter light somewhere else beyond Taco Bell. Yeah.
So tell us just a little bit, whatever you can or whatever you want to share about your time as a Marine.
Sure. Just a little bit. Okay.
Or all a bit.
Sure. No, well, and I did my 4 years and got out. Quickly graduated high school. Had a short summer, as in 40 days, because I was anxious and scared and just sort of ready to rock and roll. Week 6 or 7 into boot camp, the towers fell. So joined during peacetime, and then before I knew it, we were at war on terrorism. And
was that scary as an 18-year-old?
Indeed, yeah. Well, scary and. This is going to sound a little raw, exciting because...
That's what you guys sign up for usually, right?
And join the infantry for, and, so I should say this. We knew we were going to be put to use, and from a long idled peacetime. We knew we were going to be put to good use. And, and then deployments, and then I got out. There you go.
4 years was enough.
4 years, fast forward, yeah.
So after the military, you started a multi-million-dollar security company. correct? For the cannabis industry in 2012, why the cannabis industry? Like, how did you even, like, how does one start a security company in the cannabis industry?
Sure. So that's a ways fast forward from the military. Got out in '05, kicked off with my own security company in 2012. Worked nothing but security from in between that time frame, and I just wanted to consult, even though in a manner of speaking, I didn't know enough to really consult. But I was really determined to do it, and I wanted to be my own boss, and just had that, the entrepreneurial drive. Little did I know how much it was going to really kick my ass.
All right. None of us know. None of us
exactly. To the trial by fire aspect of it. So dove into that, and then a cohort of mine who had his own operation, he said, I got this client. I need some help with it. Risk and vulnerability assessment. Okay. Anyways, I'll spare you the boring details. I didn't know it was a cannabis client until we got there. Okay. And I'm meeting everyone. I knew very little about the the legal, I should say, cannabis industry. And then realized there was this we did really good on the job. There was this huge demand, and there were regulations behind it that they had to have security. So there was that super sub-niche area, and very few players getting into it as far as, on the ancillary side of the fence for security. So dove right into that, partnered up, kept going and going. Ultimately, 5 partners by the time I exited, but still had majority control. I was still the CEO all the way till the end. And we grew exponentially. I think I'd say about year 2.5 was when we landed. We hit like that tipping point, and we landed our first couple big clients. Okay, it's like now we're in we passed the $1 million mark with the revenue, and we're hooking and jabbing, and then we sort of diversified, got into the surveillance side of things, which really pushed us out far from a diversification standpoint, increased our margins drastically. Ultimately, I tell people today that that's ultimately what got us sold, was that we had a very elaborate surveillance program. And now fast forward even further from there, part 2 surveillance company down in Colorado Springs. But the real baby is Dynamic Warriors.
So what are some of the unique issues that cannabis faces in regards to security?
Right. Okay. Well,
I have to ask some of these questions.
No. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Absolutely. So the unique in the sense that, well, first the mandatory security, right? So they have to have it. You have to be there.
Is it part of their charters?
It's in the ordinances. We
Okay.
call it. I say the regs.
Yeah, the regs.
The regs all the time. Common phrase. The regs.
The regs. There's a lot of regs.
Yeah, so many regs, taxes, regs, right? So it's in the regs, and you have to have it. From there, largely a cash business. Even still, there's a lot of ways around that, but even still, largely cash and high street value. At the end of the day, you think about it. You got this product, or if it's stolen, if you can't sell it, you can smoke it. Massive black market for it. So, gosh, if you went to high school in the United States ever, you probably realize that. I was no different. I used to smoke pot in high school. So, anyways.
Oh, yeah. Full disclosure, I remember buying my first dime bag. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And it was illegal.
It was only like the one time, though, I think.
Yeah. So there's
I don't like the way I feel like days later, so I don't smoke.
I partake very, very rarely. Anyways, yeah.
So what were some of the biggest obstacles you found in growing both security and the surveillance companies? Actually, can you explain to us what the difference between surveillance and security is?
So the security is the big umbrella term. The surveillance piece of it is that I'll think of it as a cost-effective alternative to security guards.
Oh, okay, so cameras and...
Yeah, but beyond that, more beyond the cameras is software and very powerful algorithms. Ultimately, when the quick anecdote here is surveillance operators, which is what we have now. Okay, people who watch the cameras, right? But they're also running a lot of heavy, very expensive software. And typically, a surveillance operator will get what we call operator fatigue when they're watching anywhere from 8 to 16 feeds or 8 to 16 camera channels. After 8 hours, they really can't do more than 8 to 16 feeds. Now, that's like one client or not even one client, right? With good software, when you know what you're doing, after you mature your surveillance program over the course of a couple of years and make a lot of mistakes and then correct those mistakes, you figure out how to very effectively, better than ever, have your surveillance operator actually watch anywhere from 250 to 300 feeds. So now we've just entered through software, right? Yeah. So now we've just entered this economies of scale aspect of the business. And
I'm surprised you didn't put quotes around it.
I know, right?
You wanted to.
I know. I did it down here.
You did here. You can do it up here.
Now that one operator, that one employee can very effectively watch 16 to 20 clients instead of one. So, imagine the margins from there and how you can drop the price drastically as opposed to a security guard, et cetera, et cetera.
That's awesome. I love it. So what are some of the biggest obstacles you guys found in growing both of those businesses? So you just talked about, how do we do economies of scale? How do we scale? How do we,
some of the biggest challenges. Yeah. Okay. So you go through the learning curves first, right? Just to figure out how to actually provide the service. Yep. And still learn as you go. I would say for the surveillance side, oftentimes it's explaining to the client how this is more than just a camera setup and a person watching it on the other end. It's really a completely different ballgame. Oh, geez. Tapping into other markets, now we have that network built out in the cannabis industry, so we can hook and jab there. But breaching out into, the mini mall strips and the office spaces and the auto dealerships and so many other different sub-niche industries with different areas to watch, surveil.
They need
do the quotes again.
There you go. Surveilling.
Finding ways to get into new markets. We've been trying like hell for the last couple of years to get into schools. Okay, that has been immensely difficult. Typically, sadly, and we don't need to dive too deep on this. Typically, it takes a school shooting and one or more children or teachers need to die before the school board makes some drastic changes and they vote to earmark funds to do things a little bit differently and expand security and change some regimens and so forth.
It's really hard when the schools are so underfunded, though, too.
Indeed, yeah. Oh, yeah. It fraught with challenges. Absolutely.
Lots of challenges there. What about churches?
Churches, maybe we should look into that. Usually they don't have, unless they're well funded. Oftentimes they won't have a ton of cameras, if any. So we have to start there. Oftentimes we got to get the system in, and I know because it's now you're entering the nonprofit world, and the fact that they're passing the bowl around to get money as it is to pay for the rabbi, minister, priest, preacher, whichever whatever your faith is. Infrastructure for the building. I don't know how high priority that would be, but that's interesting take. Never really looked.
Seems to be there's school shootings, but there's a lot of also church shootings.
Yeah, church burnings and things like that. Yeah,
it's not a bad idea. About this.
Okay.
I have some ideas for you.
Okay,
cool. So your current focus is on Dynamic Warriors. So tell us about the genesis of Dynamic Warriors, and then you guys had a whole journey to providing the CBD product. So talk to us about that.
Okay. All right. Here we go.
Beginning to end.
Yeah.
Beginning to now.
Dynamic Warriors has been a brainchild of mine for many years. I always wanted to do something that was greater than myself. I wanted to have that pride and sense of belonging again, not unlike my time in the military. I wanted to, 3 major goals, with Dynamic Warriors, and we're hitting them now, all 3 now. We wanted to, because now I have several partners, we wanted to help people, that was always the initial start. We want to help people. Well, how do we help you? Okay, we'll figure that part out later. We're just going to help people out. Yeah, we're going to help people somehow. 2, we wanted to have a really good time doing it. I actually implemented that one because coming from the security industry where I have individuals with, firearms out driving around, inclement weather, protecting federally illegal plants, and people do die when that happens. Fortunately, on my watch with my companies, we've never had any major incidents, I would say, but there have been people killed doing that. In other words, my point behind that.
It's just not fun. There's no fun there.
And I lost a lot of sleep and really stressed out.
Worried about people.
Yeah. So we were helping people in a different way in that sense, but just very dangerous work. And I felt like I had paid my dues and graduated from that, and wanted to move on to the safer stuff where I could still help people. So helping people have a great time doing it, and third, if we can make a decent living doing it, then that's really cool too.
It's where it's the Venn diagram, where
Yeah,
all those
yeah,
things come together.
the triad. That was a triangle. Triad there.
I love it. So you guys started out with merchandise, right?
Right, yeah. So we started out, we were going to be heavy into the fitness space, okay?
That's right.
The gym rats and so forth. And we had mediocre results with that. And then as I spoke in depth with our dietitian, nutritionist, and master trainers, they all said, you're actually doing fine. This is the fitness industry. You get, 60% of the people that fall off, and the ones that do stick with you get mediocre kind of halfway results. Well, we didn't want to halfway or half-ass anything, right? So that really drove me bonkers, and we weren't gonna do anything with a big bang in that sense if we stuck to that route. So it was time for a paradigm shift.
Low impact.
Yeah, absolutely. We did have, a really cool apparel line, and people fell in love with the brand and the story. And I'll get into the meaning behind Dynamic Warrior here in just a moment, but from there, the paradigm shift started with everyone saying, like, you're neck deep in cannabis. You got this brand recognition, this cool, hyper-target marketed veteran brand. Why aren't you pushing CBD products? And
why are you putting those two things together?
Yeah. And several people said that were neck deep in cannabis and hemp, CBD, etc. And I finally, after like the fourth or fifth person said, I said, you know what? I don't know, because I don't know enough about it. So we went on this fact-finding mission. And
isn't it funny when other people see things in your business, or the potentials in your business that you don't see, when it was like, oh,
yeah,
right.
Like, hold on,
That
let me
makes
scratch my head. Oh, yeah, I should do that, but I'm not going to give you any credit for it since you mentioned it. Yeah. So yeah, the fact-finding mission, learning a lot about CBD products, and how can we distribute it? Which ones are working the best? Because cannabis as a whole is fraught with riffraff. Hemp is really no different, and I've heard something like there's 14,000 CBD products out right now.
There's even MLMs that do CBD.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we were even approached by someone that you should do it. You should do this one. I'm like, one step at a time.
No.
And then, so now Dynamic Warriors, right? What is that really? What's the real mission and vision behind that? And cannabis also for that was, happy accident. It was a natural fit, this homeopathic alternative to help people, the opioid crisis, veterans, the opioid crisis, insomnia, anxiety, pain, all of which CBD helps with. Now, if you look up the word dynamic, don't do it right now.
Okay.
If you look up the
You're
word
gonna tell me.
warrior, I will. I'll tell you the juicy parts. Now, the word dynamic, the real punchline definition behind that word is characterized by constant change, the ability to adapt, overcome, being eccentric, dynamic,
Moving
right?
with the punches.
There you go. Yeah. And I really underline the adapt and overcome aspect, because that has that military connection as well, and the patriotic connection. Now, warrior has multiple definitions as well. The one that I like best, that we really exploit, is a person that has or is currently braving conflict. Now, think of how many people that touch immediately. So
Pretty much every entrepreneur.
Right. So, if you're
daily.
listening to this, if you're watching this right now, congratulations, you are a dynamic warrior. So it goes beyond, because a lot of people, especially in the veteran community, think that you have to be a combat veteran to be a warrior, which is so bogus. That's absolutely incorrect. Yes, you can be a combat veteran, but you can be the cancer survivor. You can be the single working mother. You can be the teacher. You can be the amputee. You can be the child that was born 10 weeks premature. I'm referencing my daughter right now, from the intrinsic to the mental, all the way down to the cellular level. Right. The ability to brave that conflict, adapt, overcome, and keep moving forward. And then it branches into the athletic community, so on and so forth. So the title dynamic warrior can be bared by so many, and it touches so many others, and it has this very positive connotation behind it. And so we have that edgy look, but there's very positive branding.
I really love the
behind
DW.
it. Thank you. Yeah. Absolutely, and there's a lot of there's a lengthy explanation behind that DW as well. We don't need to.
We'll do
dive
that
into
next time.
Yeah, that'll be another
Derek
podcast.
actually handed me a card that was a medal.
Yeah,
Those are cool. Where did you get those?
Branding impact. New metal cards. NU.
Okay,
There you go.
So why CBD?
Right. Okay. So it touches on that.
Yeah.
Yep. So it touches on that. It touches on the top 4 ailments in the veteran space, which is our initial hyper target market before we get to that market bleed out into the patriotic community, right? And it touches the opioid crisis in the sense of the pain, the combat cocktail, which is an actual term that's used in the veteran community where doctors prescribe I was prescribed this right when I got out too, because I was diagnosed with hypervigilance disorder.
You're looking at my face like I have never heard of that.
Yeah, combat cocktail is a series of drugs that doctors in the Veterans Administration will very quickly prescribe vets that have, the insomnia, the PTSD, the sleep issues, the pain, joint pain or just chronic pain. And you get those drugs and then you have all those side effects and then you get addicted to opioids, right? CBD definitely attacks those.
Can you tell me what the combat cocktail is?
I actually don't know the specifics behind the exact drugs, and they change a lot.
Okay, it's probably like an antidepressant.
Yeah, sometimes it's
something
just
for the pain, and then maybe something for sleep.
It can get into the oxys. I mean, the heavy, mean, very addictive drugs. Yes, and then you the Ambiens, and I've met. So I was prescribed initially. This was like 14 years ago. Initially, 3 had all sorts of terrible side effects. I feel like it just made things worse. We even have one of my partners right now is actually an amputee, lost his leg in war, and he was prescribed a lot of the same drugs, and it was just causing all sorts of issues. CBD was really a miracle in his own right for him. So then we realized, obviously there's that homeopathic alternative. Right now, the opioid crisis is being termed an epidemic. The president has touched on it, and we have these problems all over the place. So why not seek some other treatments that actually work?
Yeah, we got people in pain. We need to figure out how to help them.
Yeah. So it became this natural fit, right?
Too many single legs.
Work on that. Yeah, and be
Single leg-
conscious of our posture.
Single leg deadlifts yesterday. That's okay.
Single leg deadlifts. Huh? You're a hard charger.
Yeah.
I don't do those.
So what are some of the biggest challenges with creating a CBD product?
Oh, geez.
I'm sure you've got a laundry list of them.
There's no challenges. Okay, so the biggest challenges. So quality, number one. Okay, I put on my backpack and I explored planet Earth and I looked for the right extractors, right?
Right.
You literally did research overseas, did research here in the States, and found what we thought were the best extractors. Okay, now can they do it mass scale? Because we weren't going to become hemp farmers. I mean, that's not going to happen. Now we're going to, are we going to dive into agriculture? Are we going to be into 2 industries now?
3.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so there's people that do it really well. You just have to find them, and then you start to create your own formulas. And you do, in a manner of speaking, you're creating your own label, but making sure that you have good proprietary control over the formulations. The potency is huge. Consistency, frequency of products. So is batch 1 going to be the same as batch 10,000? Okay, so that was a major challenge. And then when you produce everything at scale, that changes everything as a whole.
Because production, shipping, all the things.
Yeah. So we had to find experts in those areas, and of course we were still learning as we went along about CBD. I actually, about 10 months ago, I didn't know the difference between broad and full spectrum CBD, which is a major thing in CBD. However, I'll bet 99% of the people listening right now know the difference between
I don't know the
broad.
difference.
Yeah, exactly. So there's either 0% THC in it, or there's Farm Bill compliant 0.3% THC or
Okay,
less.
so broad is 0.
Broad is 0, full spectrum. Exactly. Yeah, full spectrum is the Farm Bill compliance. So there's a little bit of THC, but not enough to get you high.
That's
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, and
I need to
then we
check
can
my
go on and
products.
on and on. I know, right? Yeah.
I don't know what they are. Not that it matters. Nobody's drug testing me, just me. So tell us a little bit about your book.
Okay, so this is book number 2 now. It's a lifestyle. Now, when we get an actual professional publisher on board, this will be published under the Dynamic Warrior flag. Mm-hmm. The title may change. I don't think so, but for branding purposes, I have a feeling that there's going to be some strong reservations. I'm about 60% through with the book right now, and it touches on a lot of things. Mostly, at the end of the day, it's just positive lifestyle living, from meditation to exercise to sleep hygiene to actual hygiene. I'm just kidding, not
You just
actual
said
hygiene.
sleep hygiene. Sleep hygiene, I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
We talk about that a lot in the doula community. So
That's
creating
right.
sleep hygiene for babies and
yeah.
families and
In other words, healthy sleep habits, right?
Yeah, healthy sleep habits.
And then obviously we're going to touch on CBD and eating right, and then entrepreneurial lifestyle and just a variety of different factors, but all very quote, I'm going to do it again, quote unquote, self-help aspects for positive lifestyle living for the modern day warrior.
Modern day warrior.
Yeah.
We're tired of these warriors. All right. So before I ask my last question,
Sure.
What is the easiest way for people to find you?
Okay. So first and foremost, dynamicwarriors.com. Okay. Resolution Security, resolutionsecurity.net.
Well, I mean, link all that stuff in the box, but.
Okay. And then, of course, LinkedIn to all the Facebook, social media channels and so forth. If you Google me, this sounds incredibly arrogant when I say it that way, but if you Google me, you'll absolutely find me. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, final question. What is your number one piece of advice for someone who wants to start a business?
Oh, boy.
People are always like, just one?
If it's the first business, because in the first one, my first one, I sort of crashed and burned, but it was this amazing learning curve, the whole term fail forward. So that was sort of school in the sense, that teaches you above and beyond the things that college can teach you. I would say be true to yourself. Do what you feel is right. Maintain your own ethics. Don't sacrifice too much equity unless it's going to get you to the next level. There's a handful of points.
That's fine.
Yeah, just
integrity.
Yeah, there you go. And trust your gut and make sure you really, whatever the niche is, whatever your skill is, make sure you're an expert and shine above the rest.
Yeah, the crashing and burning happens when you go against your gut a lot of the time. I find that, if I bring on a client that I probably should have listened to my gut on, it just doesn't work.
If it doesn't feel right, don't do it.
Yeah, that's a good one. Listen to yourself.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, Derek.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for listening or watching. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or wherever you prefer to listen. If you learned something and found some useful information to apply to your business today, please consider giving us a thumbs up and a review. Until next week, be abundant.